rise and do the pledge of allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's move forward with the roll call.
Chair Norman,
Aye.
Director Andrews,
Here.
Director Kelly,
Here.
Director Borcher.
Here. Okay, thank you very much. I believe Director Bennett will be here shortly. Jeff, let's go through the agenda review, if you would, please.
Oh, sure. Nothing big, except we would recommend the removal of item 5. I got an email from Chair Malhart dated yesterday. I didn't read it until I got back into town. There's a lot of discussion at the LPUG about this. And apparently, there's a lot of data out there that isn't available to us yet that might make this a better data set. And there's some worry that whatever comes out first may be the precedent setter. So we'll probably back up on this one, get that data from those who have it, and then add it to the data set and run back through committee and then up to board again. So that's my recommendation to your board.
Okay, I agree with that. Gentlemen, is that
Good.
okay? So right now, we're going to remove item 5, and the rest of the agenda stays intact.
Yep. No
All right.
changes that I'm aware of.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
with your permission and board's permission, I need to ask to be excused now that we've established quorum and you can do your business.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to public comments. At this time, any audience have any comments on the for today? All right, let's move on to board communication. Any board member communication this afternoon? No. Okay. Moving forward, Lynn would be proud. Approval of minutes. Do we have a motion for approval?
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion at this time? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, those opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to informational items. Number 2 item is Las Posas Basin update.
Good morning, Chair Nauman and directors. For the record, my name is Kathleen Rydell. This morning, GMA staff did attend the Las Posas Users Group. Item 5 was discussed and why it should be pulled in the opinion of the people in the audience, and that additional information was available. There were other discussions of such as the water well applications that GMA has received 5 water well applications that they will be considering in the future. Chairman Robert Aranio of the Las Posas Users Group will provide a further update on the meeting this morning.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Robert.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. Robert Aranio for Crestview Mutual and also Chairman of the Las Posas Basin Users Group. Kathleen did a very good job of outlining what we did discuss, but one important thing, a little milestone I'm going to call, we got the export policy. Came out of committee today and went through a full group for taking a look at, and this is a policy that was dealt with between the people that are actually exporting molecules of water out of the Las Posas Basin, and what are the rules that we're going to play by in order to make sure that that doesn't grow and how that goes is managed going forward. The second part of that, as we've been working on that policy for probably about 6 or 8 months, was during that process a new one was grown and matured inside of that, and it's called an interbasin transfer policy. And this one we're still working on. We still don't quite have consensus among the stakeholders on. Has to do with the movement of water from the west side to the east side and the east side to the west side, and under what conditions those are going to go. So we'll continue to meet on that, and hopefully here within the next couple of weeks, maybe months, that we'll get that one hammered out and be able to get that turned out. Also, we received a report from Brian, the architect of the basin management plan, that he is working on that, and that we should expect that there is going to be significant rewrites of Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 in order to take into account the comments that were received during the comment period, and also to update new information for the graphs and for the charts that are in there. It's hard to believe now, but the first stuff that was put in there had a date on it of 2010. And here we are already a couple of years down the line, and it's ready for some updates to be going into it to see how we're going and to see how everything's trending. So he's going to be including those in the new rewrite that will be coming out here. And then finally, we have received also 4 well permits, requests for wells to be drilled, but all of them were in various states of incompleteness. And while we did take a look at them and provided some feedback to staff, we know that they're going to have to come back again for another look-see once everything is deemed complete with the packages. But we knew of 4 that went through on this one, and we still have 1 in the pipeline that we haven't seen. So there are lots of straws being drilled up and down that valley in order to address various concerns that people have, from water rates to water quality issues that are going on. So that continues to be a trend that bears watching and addressing. Thank you.
Okay, Robert, thank you so much. You wanted to back up a little bit for the, Andy, or Robert, on the, back one second, on the export, for those that may not be aware of that, can you define what you mean by exporting policy? Is that outside what area?
So this is the Las Posas Basin Users Group. So it's primarily within the Las Posas Basin, and we developed a general policy for how we want to keep the water resources within the basin and used within the basin. The water resources are going to be developed, as well as what is being currently produced within the basin. But we realize that there needs to be a series of exceptions. There are, I think, 4 or 5 entities that I can think of off the top of my head that straddle basin boundaries. Crestview is one of them. We have part of our service territory that dips over into Pleasant Valley, yet we're 98% within the within the Las Posas Basin. So I have some historical demands that are moving molecules of water right now today from the Las Posas Basin into Pleasant Valley, whereabouts those homes are located. So there's an exception there. Also, we put in an exception in case of emergency. An agricultural interest well happens to go down and they have to get water from another source. That could potentially allow molecules to move back and forth across basin boundaries. And then the third exception has to deal with regular ongoing maintenance issues and what is the prudent way in order to allow maintenance to be done on water systems and water to move, such as Crestview has the ability to be a backbone and move water to Camarillo if they need to do work, like they did yesterday with Edison testing, or if a more significant event happens and entities need to put water to within the Callegas system to get water and be able to keep everything going. So how that all work. So that's whereabouts we're looking at it.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Okay, moving forward on to item 3, which is fiscal year 2012-2013 year-end work plan update. Oh, yes, would you receive and file, guys?
Move to receive and file Kathleen's report on the Las Posas Basin.
Second.
All right. Okay, go ahead, Rick.
Good afternoon, Chair, Nauman, and Directors. For the record, Rick Birgoots. I'll be presenting item number 3 today, fiscal year 13-14 year-end work plan update. So during the last fiscal year, we had the normal group. We had 10 board meetings, 70-some-odd board letters, but also this last fiscal year was the first year with the committee meeting structure, and I'm going to talk just briefly about that. My presentation is very short. We had a number of committee meetings last year. We had 14. The first committee meeting was actually in September of 2012, and these are some of the items that the committees have discussed. The Las Posas Basin specific planning, great. There were a number of discussions with the GREAT project and what was needed for that and how to encourage that work. Fiscal Committee has talked about budgetary issues. Operations Committee has talked about meter calibration, irrigation allowance, non-reporting. And overall, it seems like the committee structure is working well. I know from my experience with the Operations Committee, we've been able to work through them to bring issues to the full board on meter calibration and interest and penalties and have things move through the board process more quickly at that level. From the records perspective, we did several transfers. Enumerated here, we had an ag to M&I transfer, a baseline allocation transfer. By themselves, these probably aren't significant within the agency, but the reason I bring them up is just because some of them do require a lot of work under the existing agency rules. The baseline transfer actually involved a lot of back and forth and research on the applicant's part. Ultimately, we were able to approve that transfer. Your board has a supplemental M&I and an in-lieu credit program, which require we make transfers of credits throughout the year. We also approved 2 other special credit transfers. Those both happen to be for United Water Conservation District. And so there's a fair amount of work that goes into these transfers, even though we don't do a high volume of them. Just want to point out, we sent out about 850 semi-annual statements this last fiscal year, roughly half during each half of the year. We processed 174 applications for irrigation efficiency. So a high level of effort. Jessica does a lot of that for us. Miranda has since moved on. Miranda has helped with that some. Jessica does the lion's share of that now and reviews the data, enters it, and assists the operators as needed. Also, big effort on non-reporting. We briefed your board on that several times. We sent out 52 notices of violations for failure to file towards the end of this last fiscal year. And reaching the property owners really sped up the process to get people to report. So we intend to give your board a more detailed report on that and other compliance issues for the year, probably in December this year. The meter calibration program continues to chug along. This is the second time we've gone through the whole agency-wide meter calibration program. At the end of June, we're up to 87% for the current phase of completion, so that's good. What I want to point out is the universe is a little bit over 400 wells, and for those 400 we had to send out second notices for about half of those. So we're getting the work done, but we're still having to send out second letters to about half the people before we get it to completion. Okay. Furthermore, on
Rick.
technical service.
Excuse me, Rick.
Yeah.
Is it a fair assessment to say that ultimately you're getting better cooperation, though you're still sending out your second letter? I mean, it appears that your numbers are indicating you're getting better cooperation with the...
I think it's slightly better. I would look to Kathleen. She's doing the line. She's nodding.
She says so.
It's better than phase 1.
Okay. So it's going in the right direction.
Okay.
So I mentioned GREAT earlier. GREAT was a big effort for your board. There were multiple executive committee meetings, board meetings, stakeholder meetings. So we're happy to have the GREAT resolution completed. Robert Aranio mentioned well permits. During the last fiscal year, the agency processed 14. Many of those are within the Las Posas Basin. And there's a current process that we use to move those through if they're in the Las Posas Basin. We'll be highlighting that process a little bit more at the next executive committee meeting when we talk about the Las Posas Users Group proposal for an ordinance change to look at those a little bit differently. And of course, we brought to your board the annual report, and we've done a number of things with the irrigation allowance index, including working with the weather station siting efforts. That continues to move forward, chugging very slowly. Right now, the Department of Water Resources is working with the Tierra Rajada Golf Club, and the current issue is the contract language with DWR. and whether or not Tierra Rajada is required to indemnify DWR. So that's an issue that they're wrestling with, and we've inserted ourselves in the process to the maximum extent we can to try and move things along. And our recommendation is to receive and file the report.
Okay, Rick, thank you. Any questions, gentlemen?
I had one. I'm looking here, Rick, page 2 of 4, in box CR2. Agency staff scheduled a meeting and met with Mike Pettit, County ITSD Director, and his staff to address our concerns. They devoted a full-time analyst to the project at no cost. What's going on here with the software?
Well, the software has had some glitches and some bugs in it. They begin to become apparent to us in April, May of this year. And obviously, you can see from the write-up here that we ended up elevating the concerns to Mike Pettit. And as they've looked at it, they've realized that they need to dig into it and do some more analysis to find out what's causing some of these problems. So the staff that they brought on board is currently analyzing the system. We're also conducting, as part of the analysis, their business analyst has met with us. She's talked with us. She's working with Jessica about once a week to diagram out various process flows on how the system is supposed to calculate payments, penalties, those types of things. And so they're honing in on what are causing the problems, and we can bring a report back to your board in the future. Right now, we're still in the analysis phase.
So to add to that, the software is operational, it's being fine-tuned, and all this is at no charge.
Yeah, thank you.
I understand that, and it sounds like you guys are addressing it, which is excellent. It just obviously concerning, that a lot of records involved there, and want to make sure that data is not corrupted somehow and ends up, you've got a lot of history there that you're counting on.
Right.
Okay.
Rick, if I might, you quickly went past the discussions on the DWR citing issues. In the past, that's been kind of a personnel issue within DWR and opinion differences. Does that remain the issue, or is there something wrong with our potential site?
Well, I hear two questions. First, is that still an issue? No, that's not the issue that it has been.
Okay.
Second question, is there something wrong with the site? No. The Tierra Rajada site has actually been approved all the way up to DWR in Sacramento. So we don't expect that will change. What the issue is now is Tierra Rajada agreeing to the Department of Water Resources, they call it a cooperator agreement, but it's the contract that Tierra Rajada would have with the Department of Water Resources and the GMA. And the concern that Tierra Rajada has is the state's boilerplate contract would require Tierra Rajada to indemnify the state if anything would go wrong with the weather station. And they're not entirely sure they want to do that.
Okay. The previous site was going to be the country club in Moore Park?
Correct.
And that got replaced by Tierra Rajada?
Correct.
And the Tierra Rajada site is exactly sited where?
It's just east of the agency boundary near Highway 23.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Steve, any comments? Okay, let's go ahead and read and file.
Do we accept and file?
Okay. All right, got a second? Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Rick. Moving on to the year-end budget performance report.
Good afternoon, Chair Nauman, board members, members of the audience, Gerhard Schubner. I'll be doing this item. I do have a short presentation, but I'd be happy to defer if that's the board's pleasure.
I would like to, gentlemen?
I think we should hear the presentation.
Okay, let's move forward then.
Can you bring the presentation up, please? You also have copies of the slides before you so you can follow and any of the numbers that are up on your screen. And not seeing the presentation. I can jump right in. You do have the presentation. The audience won't, but if you'd like me to get started, here we go.
There we go.
There we go.
You're fine.
Okay, very good. So in today's presentation, it'll be very short, brief. Of course, stop me at any point and ask any questions. But this is a summary presentation highlighting our fiscal year, the past fiscal year that ended on June 30th, end-of-year budget report. So let's just start with the budget spreadsheet, and of course you have a copy of that, the big spreadsheet that's included in your packet here, the 11 by 17. Started off with a very healthy balance, close to $3 million. We received revenues of approximately $1,073,872. That left us with funds of about $4.3 million, and total operating expenditures of slightly over $1 million. That left us with an ending fund balance of approximately $3.2 million, a difference of approximately $1 million. First off, let's talk about the revenues. Pump charges, the number that you see, the first number is the budgeted amount that you adopted. We received $546,599. That's a difference of approximately it's $26,599. And I put this other number here to highlight the amount of groundwater pumping that represents at $4 an acre foot. Interest, you can see where we're pretty close. Difference is slightly over $600. We had surcharges. We anticipated or budgeted for $500. And we received slightly over $800,000, difference of $311,528. Let's move to expenditures. The vast majority of them were in line with budget estimates. I haven't gone down and highlighted all of them. You can see that on the spreadsheet. But if we just look at some of the bigger line items, legal fees, we did budget for $65,000 and expended $74,000. As you recall, we did have a pretty significant legal issue or case that was handled by County Council this past year. Our software, you just had a discussion on that. We expended slightly more than anticipated. There is a difference. The $21,000 of that was a carryover from last fiscal year, something that came in after the book, so it was recorded and booked last fiscal year. We are due a credit of $5,278, and I have a confirmation from our IT services that we will be getting that credit. With our ITRC contract, that's the contract with Stuart Stiles of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. We had $30,000 in the contract. We expended slightly less than a third of that, close to $10,000. And then the weather station purchase, we budgeted $10,000 and we spent slightly over $8,000. Moving on, we had consultant contracts. We didn't expend really any money. That's a slight carryover from contract we had in the previous fiscal year recorded. GSAP, that's our grant program. We still have 2 projects left through the first part of this year, so we have that remaining amount of money still to be invoiced and paid. And then public works charges. We budgeted $724,000, expended $568,919, difference of $155,000. That's due primarily, we believe, to the vacancies that we've been carrying the last 6 months. Contingency, there was no transfers this past year. That amount remained the same. And then GEMS, per your board's direction, we moved $500,000 into that line item, along with the resulting interest, and now that account balance is slightly over $1 million. So in conclusion, the pump charge remains the same at $4 an acre foot. You had 136,650 acre feet of groundwater extraction. Reminder, our goal is 100,000 acre feet, so we did have more pumping this past year than we have on average. An average is about 125,000. Revenues are up overall, slightly over 300,000, and expenditures are down overall, slightly over 600,000, for the reasons that I explained in the previous slide. So with that, I'd be happy to answer your questions. This is a receive and file.
Mr. Chairman, I move to receive and file.
Second?
Second.
Moving forward.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. You try the mic again. First of all, we do have two alternates, I believe, in the audience. I want to make sure you got them. As a reminder, we're rolling. We're taking off the agenda up 0.5. So item 6.0 will move into proposed plan and schedule for updates for the 2007.
Thank you, Chair Nauman, board members. Again, Gerhard Hubner. I'll be presenting this item. Similarly, I have a short presentation. I can defer if you wish in the interest of time, or I can go through the presentation at your pleasure. Very good. Okay. As explained in your board letter on this item, the 2007 update to the GMA plan that was accomplished, of course, in 2007. That's why we have it named as such. That was a accumulation of several years of work that was from the initial 1985 groundwater management plan. And of course, the goal of the groundwater management plan is to identify and develop groundwater management strategies that would bring the agency and its aquifers into balance. So that process involved the board setting aside funds for with United, and that was the primary author, Dr. Steve Bachman, who, along with the model then and the work of the various agencies and the stakeholders, they resulted in the plan that also involved multiple stakeholder processes and several revisions that led to the adoption of by the board in May of 2007. So that's all background. So here we are slightly over 5 years later. This is the straw man proposal. Essentially just taking the calendar out, laid out sort of similar processes, and of course this is subject to revision by your board, by members of the audience, as you see fit. So what I put up here on the screen is this December to essentially have a scoping meeting. What do you want to do in this update? What's the extent and scope, the type, the things that you want to see? Based on that input, next winter 2014, we would take that input and basically put together sort of a scope of work. That scope of work, of course, then we would refine some of the budgeting, staffing, whether it would be internal, external, all internal, and then come back to you as part of our budget action in spring 2014. With hopefully those steps in place, we would then start work July 1st next year with the idea that 6 months later, in January, we could roll out the first draft, have workshops throughout that year, winter, spring, on the draft plan, of course, any revisions incorporated through the comment process, and then September 2015, have a board hearing and adoption. Get tentative, straw man's proposal, subject to any type of input or revision that you see fit. So as you know, the subject of this has been on our work plan for at least 2 years, but due to lack of staff, we haven't proceeded forward. Again, I just put up a rough estimate on the cost. Could cost less. If you're looking at just updating the figures, tens of thousands of dollars. If you're looking at a wholesale revision of the plan, it could be $500,000. So again, this is just a rough estimate. Depending on the scope, how much you scope it, how much you want to do, that will define how much cost will be required to update the plan. And similarly, once we have the scoping and the type and the extent, we can determine who should do the work. Should it be a partly staff? Should it be external contract? Should it be wholly staff? Or a hybrid of the two? So that's essentially the scope of this item. This is an informational item. We're looking for input. We can proceed with the schedule. It can be modified, or your board can, of course, just direct us otherwise in any shape or form that you see fit. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I got a question, Chair. And pardon me if this sounds a bit kind of stupid on my part, but why go through this? Why the update?
Generally, any plan should be revisited at appropriate intervals of time. Generally, 5 years is typically used. I have to look at our legislative. It might be likely, but I would have to double check on that.
There's
So
a
our legislative
requirement.
act may have required it,
Okay.
but why it wasn't done between 85 and 2005, that I can't answer.
Because my next statement would be that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, but there probably are some things that need to be updated or some new understandings, I would imagine.
Some things are certainly outdated. Some things probably need to be refined or they're obsolete. Certainly we know some of the figures and maps should be updated, although based on even the discussion today, that might be a little difficult. So in terms of staff effort.
How do the specific basin management plans fit into the groundwater management plan? Are they a piece of it, or?
Certainly, if they are complete, available, they would be incorporated through this update. And of course, as these are, they would be essentially folded in to any update or when the board finalizes a specific plan.
Well, that in itself seems to be a good justification for the update. Thank you.
I'd like to add to that. I just want to make sure in our plan update that we specifically know what the real goal and the real plan that we're trying to achieve,
Okay.
and kind of review where we are, kind of the past, present, future process. Need to see where we've been, where we're going, and where we are today,
I agree.
and then we'll make sure that we are making the progress. And then the other thought is we got to have a model, right, too, to go with this. Most likely.
That would be great. Yes. And we know United is making progress.
Yeah, Tony Morgan's here. I don't know if Tony, if you want to come discuss on that or a little bit, please. Because that's a big part of this whole management plan.
For the record, Tony Morgan, the groundwater manager at United. With respect to the model, lots of progress has been made out on the Oxnard Plain, Pleasant Valley, Forebay areas. We're preparing to move into the other basins up the Santa Clara River right now. If we're going to look at a completion date for this model, you're probably 12 to 18 months from now. And then part of that completion will be trying to integrate this model with the model that is being developed with Callejas' lead out in Las Posas Basin. So those two models need to be dovetailed together as well. So the modeling effort, while moving along, still has some road to get down in front of it.
Tony, does that work pretty much what he outlaid, from the December to winter to spring? Does that kind of fit the time frame?
It kind of does. I mean, from the perspective of the model's going to be in various stages of completion during that phase, so I'm not sure that I would want to commit to saying that it's going to be available for running scenarios and things like that at that point in time. But nonetheless, we're on approximately a similar path.
Okay. Jeff?
Yeah, your board may want to get some information as to the status of the Las Posas model.
I'm working on that next. I see him coming.
Okay.
For the record, Brian Bondi, Cayugas. We're running a little bit behind the schedule of United. We are working on a model for the eastern part of the Las Posas management area. Probably a year or so behind the schedule that Tony gave for the other areas. But it's something we're working on and plan to take through the stakeholder process to vet it from a technical perspective and make it available for use for your purposes as well.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Tony?
Another question for Brian, before you get away.
Brian, don't leave.
The basin management plan itself, where is that at? Was it possible that get folded into this process on that schedule?
I think that's a very good possibility. We are in the process of making the third draft of that document and continuing to work with GMA staff and the stakeholders to bring that to a point where we all have some level of agreement, and hopefully we can get to a point where everybody's comfortable and that can be used as part of your update. We're still trying to achieve that goal, and that would be a great outcome. Schedule-wise, it's really hard to say. We've been working on this for the better part of 3 years. It's a stakeholder process. I think we all understand the difficulties in trying to predict schedules in that type of a framework. But we will be coming out with a new draft. I'm working on it now, and hopefully that's something the group can be discussing towards the end of this year and be working with GMA staff on any comments on that as well.
Because I would add that just for the rest of the board, that seems to be a critical part of this entire groundwater management plan is to, if there are specific basin plans available to fold in, it's part of the puzzle.
No question. Tony, if I can get you back for a second. Just kind of touch on what David just mentioned, the importance of the model with the planning process, kind of the key points, why it's so important for the model.
Well, I think one of the things that everybody recognizes is that the water supply portfolio in the county is evolving. It's changing. There's a lot more discussion of desalters and brackish water use and those kinds of things. And so the model gives you at least one tool to be able to evaluate how that progression towards a new mix of water supplies is going to impact the aquifers that we're responsible for managing. So we need to factor into things like less water being available off the Santa Clara River for in-lieu delivery out onto the Oxnard Plain via the PTP and or PV systems. So if that restriction in diversions is a function of, let's say, the ESA constraints that are likely to be imposed, then how is that going to be affected? At the same time, the brackish water desalters are coming on. Are we now back at a wash where we haven't really gained any new water? We don't know. But the model gives you a tool in which you can make some of those qualitative determinations a little more quantitative. Does that help?
Yes.
And if I would add, from the staff's perspective, having the model, we would like the BMOs to be reevaluated because they were created or established based on the previous model.
That's right. So the whole update is important in the process. They review it every so many years, but the idea that you touched on, I just want to make sure everybody has heard the importance of the model and with all the updates with the water that's available, what we can do and what we can't.
Exactly. And it gives you an ability to evaluate. Does this give us a significant more benefit than this other project? So it's a tool, and that's the way you should view a groundwater model. It's a tool to be used. Okay. If I may, I think United staff is very supportive of GMA staff's proposition to move forward with an update. I think updates are required. Models are and plans are supposed to be periodically reviewed and updated, and certainly things are changing out there now. The GREAT program isn't the GREAT program that was envisioned and included in the 2007 groundwater management plan. It's now a different thing, and so we need to review that and see how that fits in with the mix for the next 5 years that the plan would cover. Staff's talked a little bit about goals and strategies, and I think that's important. And one of the things I'm sure the directors will want to weigh in is what's the goal of the plan? What are we trying to accomplish? And then if there are strategies that come out of those goals, then if those strategies involve projects, how would the GMA, which typically doesn't get involved with project construction, how would they work to try to ensure or maybe encourage that those projects actually materialize if the plan's going to be dependent on them in one degree or another. So there's a lot of things out there that could go into the plan. I think from my perspective, I would urge staff and directors to move the plan to be more inclusive rather than narrow on its focus, but be more inclusive and try to see what we could come to an agreement on. To that end, last point is United's groundwater staff is ready to help, be supportive in whatever fashion the directors and GMA staff feel would be productive. Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I just really want to thank everybody who's been working on these projects for us. When we pick up the paper every day now and read the issues in the San Joaquin and actually up in North Sacramento too, we're so far ahead of those people. It's really interesting. We may see problems here, and this is a much more complex situation than you have under the San Joaquin Valley, and yet we're working harder on it for a longer period of time, and they'd be really lucky to have the progress we've already had. So I thank everybody who's been doing their job.
Steve, do you have a comment?
Yes, I do. I heard the question, what's going to be the goal of the plan? I just have to try to look at it from the big perspective and from the citizens of Ventura County. The Fox Canyon Aquifer is one of the most important resources that we have here in Ventura County. The creation of the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency was to make sure that we got this aquifer into safe yield, and we were supposed to have it into safe yield by 2010. We need to do regular updates of the plan for something as important as this and something as dynamic as this and something with as many changes as there are, like the GRAPE program, et cetera. Now, to the extent that this plan can be the best plan we can possibly make it and have the best input from the stakeholders, I think that's what we want to do. So we do want to have great stakeholder involvement in this process, but this needs to be a great update, because at this point in time, I think that it's not clear what safe yield is in the Fox Canyon Aquifer. It's not clear what our plan is going to do to get us to safe yield. We have some partial things that we're doing, some things that we don't know, some things that are out there. And when we're finished, we may not have everything, but I think we should clearly identify what we have and what we don't have. We should even say, we don't have a good definition of X, Y, or Z. We don't have an ability to get from here to there. Right now, we have had, and this is the other point that I want to try to emphasize, is that I appreciate, yes, we should roll in all of these basin-specific plans as they come forward. But there is a tendency for these things to drag and drag and drag, and for some people to use, the issue of we need more input to constantly have them drag. We have a responsibility to get there. We were supposed to be there by 2010. So I just want to be clear. I'd be really think that we would not be doing our duty and we wouldn't be meeting the requirements if we just said, we're just going to continue moving down the road. We have to regularly be saying, where are we? What do we need to do to get better and to get closer? We'll never have a perfect plan, and that's why we should constantly go forward. But I think we have to look at this as the opportunity to try to keep everybody moving, and the good work. You said we're ahead of other places, but we have such an important asset that we have to make sure that we protect. And there are hard issues out there. And when you have hard issues, there's a tendency for all of us to push them off, right? And a plan could force us to address some of those issues. And getting these basin-specific plans forces people to address some of those issues. And there is a natural human tendency to not want to address those and put things off. So I think it's very appropriate for us to begin this process. And if we have to adjust the schedule later, we have to adjust the schedule, but we should get going onto a schedule. So I just wanted to emphasize, I feel strongly about that. Thank you.
Any comments from the audience?
Good afternoon again, Robert Aranio from Crestview Water. I too support that this thing goes forward and that we get started on this and take a look at these issues. And I appreciate staff's saying that this was a straw man as far as the timeline in which they have and the major milestones that they have. And as you so eloquently articulated, I would encourage that more stakeholder involvement be included in this. I see where we have one workshop for initial scoping meeting, and then that's pretty much it until we get to see a draft again. And I realize that this is only an idea to float out and get your input, but if we're potentially looking at spending between $200,000 and $300,000, that's a pretty good sized working product. And there's going to be quite a bit of involvement there that I would encourage that there's the opportunity for stakeholders to have some involvement in, as this is a plan as to what might impact our future. Also that maybe one possibility is a chapter be carved out for the Las Posas Basin, since our plan is already in progression and that much farther ahead of other ones. And so that it isn't just, what should I say, missed or misplaced. But that's it at this point. Thank you.
Two things, if I could. One, I appreciate exactly what you're saying. I think we have a responsibility to have good stakeholder involvement in something as important as this. And at the same time, the stakeholders have a responsibility to make sure that involvement is timely and is not used to unnecessarily delay the movement of the plan. So that's the tension between those two. The second thing with the Las Posas plan, I have to tell you, I was on the board and I left and I came back and I thought the Las Posas plan was going to be done. Las Posas plan has a responsibility. I'm still trying to get my hands around what is really the plan here, right? And so when you say it's far along, I haven't felt the evidence of it being far along. So okay. I'd be welcome to see it. I'd like to see it. But we do have to get moving. We have a responsibility to report to the public and go, this is where we are with this basin, right? And stuff.
Understand.
So, thank you.
The only thing to add, just like what Tony and Brian mentioned, we have to have those models in place so we can see what the effects are, what comes in, what comes out with all the different assets we have.
And so we have a responsibility to get the models
Right.
done. Stuff.
Okay, I think any other comments? Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
Thank you. Steve Nash, President of Oxnard. Good afternoon, Chair and Directors. I appreciate Supervisor Bennett's intelligent comments on the necessity for having some sort of plan in place. I know that I assume that this is true for all of California, but the cities have to submit an urban water management plan every 5 years. I assume the county also. I would ask the GMA to perhaps get on a similar 5-year plan. I think that things are changing, and it seems like maybe the rate of change is accelerating. If we're looking at a 3rd year of drought, then that is really, in my mind, a game changer for how the GMA manages its resource. Of course, this is a discussion that should have been held back in 1982, but here we are in 2013. And again, the two goals, the two mandates for the GMA is trying to get the water basin back into a sustainable yield, and trying to get a handle on the seawater intrusion. I haven't seen any reports, but a dirty little secret floating around the city of Oxnard is that the chloride content of the wastewater effluent that goes to the advanced water purification facility is already on the razor's edge of overwhelming the AWPF's ability to fully remove all of the chlorides. So again, that's a game changer, and I hope that the GMA takes all of these things into consideration. That a lot of public forums are held. I can't guarantee what the attendance would be. I'm sure I'll be there, but so thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any other comments at this time? Mike, come forward, please.
Mike Solomon, General Manager, United Water Conservation District. I'd echo what Supervisor Bennett was talking about. The delays, it's all about money. It's how much it's costing. At United, we're looking at over $100 million of projects that bring no new water into the district. Just keep the infrastructure we have functioning. We just met with National Marine Fisheries. We have an overdraft about 25,000 acre feet a year on average, and NIMS has just told us that a number that we thought we were going to lose about 8,000 more acre feet, making the overdraft 33,000. They're looking at wanting 20,000 now, or they keep us in jeopardy. So a 25,000 acre foot overdraft now is probably, everything else staying the same, becomes 45. So the GMA staff needs to be aware of that. So we've got a bigger loss of water than we're starting in the hole even further. We've got huge costs at United to just deal with just keeping our infrastructure going and passing fish. We have a city of Ventura selling their state water to basically make a profit on their state water versus bringing it in. So the GMA needs to look at how do we use the county's state water. It's the contract with DWR is the county of Ventura's, not there. It's leased out to everybody else. The city is selling their water to Metropolitan Kern as we sit here in a drought. And to continue to allow that where we need to just bring that water in is very concerning. And the big part it's not bringing in is it's money. You make money more than wheeling it through Oxnard at $1,500 an acre foot. But they can continue to pump the basin. They're the only city not bringing in any state water in the county, and I'm concerned about that. And we need to address that. So all these things we talk about, we can have all these great plans. We've had this plan in place for the last 5 years. The great program, we did phase one, sort of a break even, but it was better than doing nothing. We all agree to that. The only other thing I can think of is United bought the Farrell property. We don't have it hooked up. We can't use it yet. It's about a $15-16 million project. It's part of that big expense that I'm talking about. And if the fish get more of the water, that's going to make that project pretty useless too. So we can build all these plans, folks, but we better figure out is if nobody's going to pay for it, we're going to create this really cute plan that we're all going to use for a doorstop. And we've wasted our time and we've delayed. I echo exactly what you're saying. I believe a lot of the stuff we're dealing with is keep pushing it off, pushing off, pushing off. And I use this line in every talk I do. I got 5 grandchildren who live in this county, and I don't want to leave this place when I retire, at least not pushing. We got to solve this problem and quit waiting for somebody else to solve it so that we can keep making money or not have to absorb these costs. Get serious, folks. You got to get serious. You guys have authority. You have power to do things, and it's dragging out. So I'm behind you 100%, Supervisor Bennett. I've talked to Lynn Mulhart. I've talked to Dan Nauman. We got to start doing something now, or we are going to leave such a mess and an expensive mess for the next generation, and that's not what we're supposed to be doing. So that's my comment on the planning process. Let's get serious and make it a plan that works versus a plan that's we check a list off and say we wrote up a plan. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, Mike, thank you. Okay, with that being said, any other comments?
None. Let's receive and file.
All right, let's receive and file this,
And
please.
or direction, I'm sorry.
I move to receive and file.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay,
Receive and file means we're going to go forward with the straw man schedule that they put out there.
right, and I see that schedule possibly changing with more workshops and more input
Sure.
as needed.
But this gives staff direction to get going on
Yes.
this schedule.
Yes, thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Now we move on to the action items. Item 7. Are you going to take this?
Yeah, I can't get off this podium.
Yeah. You're back again.
I'm back. Gerhard Huebner again, presenting this item. This item is number 7. This is the agency's current annual fiscal audit preparation schedule. Again, I have a very short presentation, and I'll just jump right into it. There are various government code sections requiring agency fiscal audits, their statutes. county auditor controller performs annual audits and records of every special district within the county. The auditor controller has discretion to perform these audits in-house or contract out for this service. The government code requires the agency to pay for the cost of the audit work. So this applies to the GMA. However, there is a subsection code that provides exception to the annual audit period. It specifically allows a governing body of a special district, of which this agency is, to request a biannual audit period covering 2 years versus the annual. At your June 22nd, 2011 board meeting, you direct the staff to move from that 2-year audit period to an annual audit. That was based on information we presented at the time and information that was available at the time, that the premium to move to that annual audit would be about $1,400 with the benefit of more fiscal information. So moving forward, and I put this up here just to highlight over the past basically 5, 6, 7 years when we, or audit cycles, you can see for the biannual audit cycles what the costs were, and they were running anywhere from $2,900 to $4,900 every 2 years. When we went in 2011 or 10, 11 annual audit period, that was the $4,500 that we were expending. That was in line with what the current thinking was. This year, when we sent out proposals, the proposals that came in and the lowest that we received was for $6,800. And this appears to be, this escalation of cost reflects sort of a market rate response by CPAs regarding the agency's request for proposals, rather than any increasing complexity of our financial statements or our budgeting. So I want to make that clear. Market is driving this. Some of the lessons we've learned, there are some economy of scales in biannual audit preparation. About 20 to 30% of that preparation work involves the administration of the audits and the inter-control review. The agency receives some of the benefits of these fixed costs being spread over 2 years. And we've experienced a significant amount of agency as well as our fiscal folks in terms of their time assisting and explaining the auditors how we operate, essentially our business practices. So some of the lessons we've learned. So some of the options we've laid out for you, certainly we can continue to do the annual audit as we have this past year. We're more than happy to do that. We do need to, if you go with that option, to increase and have a budget transfer of $1,800 from our contingency to fund it. Or you can switch to the biannual schedule. There will be no budget change, and that $5,000 line item will not be utilized. We are recommending today that you do switch back based on some of the evidence and rationale that I provided for you previously. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. With that being said, any questions or comments, guys?
Director Bennett, is there any reason to believe that the BOS would not approve our request?
No, I mean, if there was hints of any problems and stuff, but there have not been with Fox Canyon, so I don't think there'd be any problem with that at all.
I would move we accept the proposal and move to a biennial, or request the Board of Supervisors allow us to do a biennial auditing procedure.
Second.
Okay, have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion from the room? Okay, with that, let's go ahead and do a roll call.
And
Yes.
to clarify, Chair Nauman, this would require unanimous approval of your board.
Okay, understood. Let's continue roll call.
Chair Nauman,
Aye.
Director Bennett,
Yes.
Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Fortune.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. We'll go move forward to a biannual.
Thank you.
Moving forward to item 8. Rick, are you doing this one?
Yes, I am.
Okay, this, go ahead. This has to do with the let's see, service of the consultants for collect well and full meter data.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and Directors. For the record, Rick Virgutz. I'll be presenting item number 8 today. So this is a returning item, And we've talked with your board about this at length at the December 5th board meeting. And at that point, your board instructed us to conduct some follow-up. And those key items are on the screen. We were to look at the need to change the agency's enabling legislation and how would we do it. If there is a need, we would inquire with LPUG to see if they would be interested in facilitating a kickoff of the inspection program, and also look more carefully at the ability for the agency to team up with County Health with their well inspection program. So I'll be providing you an update on those 3 items. So for the first item, following the December board meeting, in January, your board directed us to work with the executive committee to hear proposed language to update the enabling legislation. And a spot bill was introduced. Then in February, the board approved language to move forward. And I understand from talking with Jeff this morning that there was some interest about what that specific language was. So I have that on a slide if I'm asked to show that. Just let me know. Sponsors requested it be reintroduced as a standalone. And we briefed the operations committee on this in September. And they indicated its support to move forward with the legislation change. Also, we spoke with LPUG. They determined they were not interested in facilitating sort of a kickoff to the well inspection program. Keep in mind, this is a pilot program for the Las Posas basins. One of the concerns they expressed is that the mere act of inspections could allow the GMA to obtain information that might give other county offices a window into things which could cause other inspections to occur from other county departments. Also on item 2 at the Operations Committee again, September 12th, after discussing this and some other issues, the committee indicated its support of releasing the request for proposal for consultant services in order to get that project moving forward. Staff has provided your board a copy of the current request for proposal. Other than changing the dates in it, it's exactly the same one that was presented to your board in December. Also, the Operations Committee supported conducting a small number of well inspections. So this would be just with existing agency staff. This is something we could do very soon. And we would use the checklist that's in the RFP for the well inspection program. The thinking was that doing that would be a good idea. It would help us understand if there are weaknesses in the existing agency authority. It may make those more obvious to us. And it would also be sort of a dry run to see if we're asking the right questions and where we can improve things. And follow-up item 3, we did talk with County Health. They don't do a lot of well inspections, and they're not interested in expanding their well inspection program. And so it's not a good option because of the numbers for the agency to tag team with them. They primarily look at small water systems which have 5 to 15 or 5 to 14 service connections, and that's what they focus on. And just to summarize, if the agency desires to move forward with the legislation change, we should do that by December 1st. Get that language in there. We can move forward with a small number of voluntary inspections with existing staff. And that data, as I mentioned, could be useful for the legislation change effort. Earlier in the process, LPUG did provide the agency constructive comments on the RFP. But in terms of assisting with the kickoff, there isn't the support there. And we can conduct this outreach if directed by your board. The joint inspection approach doesn't appear to be a viable option. And we worked with the Operations Committee earlier this month. They indicated its support of pursuing the legislation change again, conducting a limited number of well inspections and releasing the RFP for the well inspection program. And our recommendations are for your board to direct staff to renew its efforts with the legislation change, to conduct a small number of well inspections, and release the RFP for a well inspection, for consultant services to conduct the well inspections. And that's all I have for my presentation.
Okay, so those, after everything being said, those are your 3 bullet points that we're looking at after the committee meetings and all your input, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Mike, go ahead, please.
Rick, when I left that meeting, and I would have Director Bennett express the confines of which we asked that the inspectors be, because we discussed that at length, but I thought we were going to do the RFP after we determined the validity of our need, and also that the selection of those sites to be inspected was to be a random list, not a prejudged list, to give us a more random idea of what we might find if we just picked some names and went and looked. And more importantly than the end thing, and I would like you very much to put up the language of the proposed legislation request, because it did not include any of the aggression that the original proposal did. So I think some people's angst might be relieved if they would see that it really wasn't going to give unlimited inspection rights. And Director Bennett, if you would please, and I appreciated you led the campaign to be sure that any inspectors come there with blinders on their hay so that they don't be accused of tattletaling on something they shouldn't even have been looking at. So might you comment on that if you would?
The other 2 things that you mentioned, one of them I agree with you, is that we thought they should be random inspections, so we could find out, if you just randomly pick them out, what percentage of people are not willing and willing, so that was more helpful. So that's what my understanding. I don't recall us saying hold the RFP. We said get going on the RFP, not hold the RFP until afterwards. That's my understanding. So I'd agree with staff in terms of where that was. But what's not expressed in this report, which I think we really emphasized in our committee meeting, is that to the extent that there's concern that the well inspection is going to be used for somebody to go in and therefore report all kinds of other potential violations that are on people's properties, that's going to make people less comfortable with the well inspection process. And so to the extent that we're legally allowed to do that, we wanted to make sure that the well inspectors, that it is our direction to the well inspectors, to the consultants also, that they are to focus exclusively on the well, the operation of the well, the flow meter, and that they, again, to the extent that it's legally allowed. I mean, if they see a meth lab going on, they probably have to do something. But that they're not to come back and talk about, But to the extent that they're allowed to, we don't want to have reports of, well, this structure looks suspicious and you ought to go out and look at that, et cetera. That we actually put that into our directions to our staff when we do the limited number, and also to the consultant when we move forward with the consultant. So that was something that was pretty important to us as we
Well, and that's why I asked Director Bennett to make this expression, because after all, as being the representative of the county, it would be some information being exchanged by various Ventura County agencies, perhaps, that would probably get us a bad name. And we would like, or at least in my world, I would like to find out if there are some wells that are not being reported that really are. We spend a lot of money looking for wells. And so that being said, if we can find whether wells do or don't exist that are hiding out from us. We had an interesting conversation today. One member of the Las Posas group with a 9-year-old well was surprised he was supposed to be doing his meter test. And so we had him have a self-turned in person. But, if we can avoid having this come as a bad name for the agency, I think we're well served. And in the beginning, if the county does a few of them for us under their contract with us, at least that'll give us some idea what we're finding. And then later, I think Robert Aranio made a very good comment during the meeting, and that was that a contract person being not associated with the county government would be less likely to be accused of doing anything other than just looking at the well and making sure it's there. So with that, I would like to hear any comments from the audience, because This was of considerable discussion before, and we tried to picture it in such a way that it would be less offensive, that we could still proceed and try to get the authority that county council says we need to have in order to do it on a grander basis. And also, I think with what it is evolved to, I don't think necessarily this randomness should be confined to the Las Posas. The original talk was that the Las Posas, through Carol Schoen's efforts and stuff to find wells, that we were further down the road up there. But if we're going to do a random test, I would ask that, at least when I did government inspections, we had a table of random numbers. We just went and we serpentined through the table of random numbers, and that way you avoid predisposing yourself to a certain number. So if you took the whole table of the 700 wells and you said, I'll start with number 52 and go every 50th one or some damn thing and just go through it, and that'll give you the random number of all the wells. And that's how I was required to look for boxes inspecting on the produce and stuff, And so by saying that, we can do it in a very random method and not look like we're trying to pick on any one person. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I could just, before we take public comment, it seems like we got to get the language up there too, so people see the language.
That's what, Rick, do you have the language for this?
I do. This is the board-approved language up on the screen.
So Al, can you perhaps do you have access to be able to tell the audience here today what Title 13 says?
Not specifically, but just in general, that is a procedural or a list of procedural requirements for applying for administrative search warrants. It applies to any sort of regulatory agency that's seeking an inspection. So it's not very specific. It's just general requirements shall apply to a court and would require the agency to file a petition seeking that inspection warrant. But beyond that, there's not a lot of detail in the Code of Civil Procedure.
But you have to go to court to get this?
Correct. The agency would need to file a petition.
My understanding is this would be the same kind of warrant that other agencies that needed to get on and inspect would follow to be able to get on and inspect. Correct.
And I think the previous danger was expressed would be that if exec officer decided to authorize it, that somebody could just go, and that's not the case. This would require a court order to allow it.
It is, and the language that's proposed here is very similar, if not identical, to language that appears in existing statutes that allow for these other agencies to seek warrants.
Got a question. Do we need to state the purpose of visiting or inspecting the extraction facility? Do we need to, I'm just asking, do we need to have a bullet point of items that we're looking for, or just, because it's just kind of general inspection? Would that be good to place in there?
The way this is drafted is it's essentially a compliance inspection, so it would cover any potential violation of the ordinance code.
And now, correct me if I'm wrong, this is to change our act, then the ordinance would need to be refined or updated perhaps if we wanted to have more specificity?
Perhaps, but this would certainly be required before we could go into court and seek the warrant.
No, the only reason I bring that up is just if there's a point of reference that we can say to an ordinance or part of our other mandate is the GMA, what we're trying to achieve with the inspections. If it's clear enough to your eyes and ears, and that's what I'm asking.
The inspection report just asks the contact information of the person, the location, the well information with regard to the electric meter number or the type of motor, and then the flow meter manufacturer and all the information about the flow meter and the pipe size. It doesn't, in one of the early deals, it was asking for a photograph and a bunch of other intrusive things. I don't know if that's out of there or not.
Dr. Kelly, I have that form, and I put it up there. And yeah, certainly the operations committee desires for us to focus only on the well did come through to us at that time. I'm sorry I didn't make it more clear in the presentation, but the instructions will be to focus on the well.
And I stand corrected, the photos are limited to a 10-foot photo of the facility, the meter face, so you know the name and manufacturer to confirm that as it's filled out, and the meter serial number. So those are just cross-checks to be sure that the meter is in place and is what they are claiming it is. Mm-hmm.
So Al, do we just need to is it necessary to reference this inspection report in the written language, or just as is?
You're referring to the proposed legislation? Yes. I don't think it is. The legislation is drafted to be broad enough to cover any potential compliance issue. The specific request for a warrant could identify any limitations in the scope of the inspection, as could the ordinance, as Gerhardt was mentioning, in terms of what agency staff might inspect for. But the language that was shown, I believe, is appropriate, and also the direction that your board was discussing earlier, that was discussed at the committee in terms of what inspectors will and will not report out of their inspections, is something that your board has discretion to decide.
Okay. All right, any other comments or questions? And from the audience?
There is someone willing to take this, to sponsor this? Legislator?
There is. I don't know who it is yet, or who it was, but we're working with the legislative analyst upstairs, and I think they're arguing about who the most appropriate person is.
Very good.
So in our action item, Jeff, is that put that as a footnote that it'll be handled later as far as who's going to carry it?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the audience this afternoon? Okay. All right, let's, this is an action item. Let's, how would you like to phrase the motion, gentlemen?
I'll take a stab at it if you don't mind. I would move that we accept staff recommendations on items 1, 2, and 3 in our packet. I'm sorry, it's 1 and 2. And specifically to move forward the language we see on the screen at this point here for
Rick, can you put the
legislation ad.
Do we want to address the well inspections and the RFPs also? Or you just want to tackle it?
That's all wrapped in the recommendations, is it not?
Yes. Under the Operations Committee recommendations?
Right. So I'd say, I'd move that we accept staff recommendations, specifically the language that we see here on the screen at this point.
And
Al, is that sufficient?
No, because I don't know that what's up on the screen will be made part of the record, but I believe this is the language that was previously approved by your board, so.
Oh, okay. It's already been approved.
So I would have the motion just affirm that staff is directed to move forward with the previously approved proposed legislation.
Okay. One more time. So I would move that we approve, we direct staff to conduct a small number of voluntary inspections with the, as discussed here today, randomized. What else was included in that?
Can I just go off? If what you're going to recommend is for staff to do what they've written here, just let's adopt staff's recommendation, and then anything you want to change. But say it's, rather than us try to repeat it, because if we don't repeat it exactly like they wrote it.
All right.
We
Stab
can-
3.
Yeah, all right.
Move to approve staff's recommendations with the following caveats.
There you go.
That the inspections be done on a voluntary basis and randomized as discussed here in the meeting, and that the specific language change would mirror the previously approved language such as we see here on the screen. Does that cover it? Everyone happy with that one?
I am. I just want to clarify, when you say voluntary, the voluntary is for these initial
This
inspections.
pilot
Yes,
program.
this for the pilot inspections part of it. Right. Clear.
We got a motion. Do we have a second to that?
I'll second it.
Now we're on to discussion. Come on up.
Carol Schoen, Zone Mutual Water Company. My concern is, I don't see what the previous language is. I only see what's in front of the screen, and I'm very concerned that that last little paragraph that we all objected to may be what you're approving in the previous language.
Can I help with that? That's the language that was approved February 27th. So that's the when we're saying previous language, that's the language.
That's
correct?
the
Yeah,
County Council?
when we had a debate here when Lynn was here, it was like an hour and 10 minutes removing, putting back in that's what
If you remember, Carol, they had it at the end, it was, and if you refused, well, they could do it anyway kind of thing.
It was the coming on the property for an emergency. Yeah. Emergency access, that we wanted to be sure that that sentence is not included.
It is not.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Okay, any other questions or comments under discussion? Okay, let's go ahead and do a roll call.
I'll second his motion.
Oh, we had a second.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great.
Chair Nauman,
Aye.
Director Bennett,
Yes.
Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Fortune.
Yes.
That was painless. Okay, motion passed.
Rick, if you could manage to get the printer to print legible words.
That's hard, yeah.
Of course. Would you like me to send your board another map?
Yeah, I don't know what the problem is. Sometimes, usually when you make things smaller, they get brighter. And in this case, they got much more confused and pixelated. So, but certainly the map that was included in today's handout, you cannot read essentially any of them. Which is some of the things that was discussed at the Las Postas with regard to item 5 maps. The problem was you couldn't tell where the heck anything was because there wasn't location points or anything on it. So somewhere along the way between ACT and prayer, your computer is getting so it can't print good maps.
Okay. We will, in the future, we'll do what we need to do. Put it on bigger paper, break it into multiple maps.
All right, Rick, thank you. Moving on to Executive Officer's Report.
Only one item. There will be an executive committee meeting on October the 11th at 3 p.m. It's in room 346 here. It's on this side of the building. I think most of you have been there. Nothing else to report.
Okay, let's see, read and file for that. You have a motion, folks? Okay, motion. Second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the ayes have it. Meeting adjourned till the next scheduled meeting of October 23rd. I call the chair. Thank you for coming this afternoon.